Hello everybody and welcome to episode 10 of the Dunkelgrün podcast. This is a podcast about knitting, sometimes spinning, dyeing and many other textile crafts and fiber arts. My name is Anna. Today is Tuesday, July 25th, 2017 and it is a very gloomy, rainy day here in Zurich in Switzerland where I live. You can find me on Instagram as @dunkelgrün with an underscore and on Ravelry as dunkelgrün. Welcome and thank you for tuning in today. It is episode 10, a very special episode for me. So we are going to start with a couple of announcements and a giveaway. Then there will be a finished object, a couple of works in progress and a beautiful sock kit that I'm going to introduce you to, as well as a video of me showing you how I knit and how I purl. If you would like to skip ahead to the knitting stuff, check out the video description just below the video. There will be short links to the different segments of the podcast that take you right to the different segments. So guys, it's episode 10. I can't believe that this podcast has come so far. It is really amazing. When I started with all of this, I didn't expect that it would come that far, but I was welcomed so warmly by all of you and encouraged so much to keep going, and it was a lot of fun to get to know all of you, and I am truly grateful to be able to do this and to have all of you and to read all your comments, and it's just very nice to have this podcast. Thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting and making my days brighter. So in order to celebrate the 10th episode of this podcast, I have decided that it's time for me to release some of my hand-dyed yarns on Etsy. Many of you have been asking me about this already, and I will talk a bit about it in more detail towards the end of this episode. Also, I have put some work into my website, dunkelgrün.com, which is now remodeled and released in a new shape. And I'm quite proud of it because I did everything by myself. And this website is going to serve as a kind of portfolio of my work with picture galleries, with information. I am planning to include some dyeing recipes and tips and tricks in the future. So go over to dunkelgrün.com and check it out. Also, you will find detailed show notes for each episode of this podcast at dunkelgrün.com. The celebrations are not yet over. I have just seen that on YouTube we are getting really close to 2,000 subscribers, which is really amazing. Thank you all so much for subscribing to the channel. And of course that means that it's giveaway time. This time I have decided to give out a quite special prize to a winner, and this will be a custom dyed colorway on DK or sock weight, dyed by myself, of course. So as soon as the 200 subscriber mark will be reached, I am going to open a thread on Ravelry where you can enter to win your custom dyed colorway. The next segment will be Knit Along. The summergarmentKAL is co-hosted by Celeste of the Yarn to Table podcast and myself, and our goal is to knit summer garments and not lose the focus of sweater knitting during the summer months. So the KAL start date was May 1st and it is running all the way through to August 31st, 2017. And that is getting closer, but it's still more than a month of time, so you can still join if you would like. Check out the Ravelry group and Celeste's Ravelry group to find all the information about this KAL and to join our chatter thread. And even if you are not going to knit a summer garment, look at the chatter thread. There is so much inspiration and so many great patterns that people have chosen to knit. Of course, there will also be prizes for the winners of the summergarmentKAL, and I have introduced those two beautiful skeins of yarn in the previous episode, episode 9, so go check that out. And now we can jump right into knitting with finished projects. My finished project for this week is probably, you have already guessed, my summer top and my entry for the summergarmentKAL. And this is the Morning Mist top by Annie Claire or Annie Rowden, who designed this beautiful pattern, and I have knitted out of my own hand-dyed yarn. It is the organic merino DK base, which is a nice DK weight merino yarn. Of course, it is organic and mulesing free, and it is also very special because the superwash treatment of this yarn is not the standard superwash treatment that you guys know of, or that the normal superwash yarn comes in. It is a Blue Sign certified treatment, and that means that it was not treated with the Hercoset method, which is, as some of you know, a method that includes harmful chemicals and damages also the fiber, so that in the end you're not really left with proper wool. So this yarn is treated differently, and it still has the natural scales on the yarn, which makes it feel like much more like a non-superwash yarn. And also when I dye this yarn and put it into water, it behaves much more like a non-superwash yarn. Like, it doesn't have this wicking property that superwash yarn typically has. And I have to say, this was the first time that I knit with this base. I'm absolutely in love with this yarn. It's gorgeous, it's soft, it has the perfect feel, it's just gorgeous. Let me show you a bit how it looks like. So the color is called, the main color is called Peppermint Mouse, and here on the back we have a lace panel, which I have called Silvretta, this colorway. And yeah, so this pattern is knit. First you start with the lace panel, and then you black the lace panel, then you pick up some stitches here for the shoulders, knit up to here, cast on some stitches for the neckline to connect the two shoulders, then you knit up until under the underarms, then you pick up stitches from underneath the lace panel and keep knitting it in the round. And this is a very elegant construction, and it's actually, there is no shaping increases or decreases happening in this pattern. The only decreases you have are of course in the lace panel. It's just made out of plain rectangles, but still the fit is just fabulous. I think it is how this neckline is looking a little bit rounded, even though it's basically a rectangle, is just fantastic to me. Yeah, I think this is a really elegant top because it doesn't have any shaping and it still fits like a charm, and I think that is just amazing and great work. So which modifications did I do to the pattern? There were actually quite a few, even though they were not major modifications. In the lace panel, I will include a picture of the lace panel here. I have changed the lace so that I only work the lace on the right side. In the pattern, the lace was worked on the right side and on the wrong side, and I have altered that because I liked it more like this. And then also I have added some short rows at the lower back. Maybe I can show you that from the side. You can see that my back is slightly longer than the front because I have added some short rows just across here in order to make the back a little longer, because I like it like this. When you bend over and everything, it's just nice to have a little extra fabric in the back. And I think also that is a kind of modification that is especially good for those of us who have a little less of a bust, because I guess if the bust is larger, it pulls up the fabric in the front anyway, so that the front ends up shorter than the back. And for those of us who are not that well equipped in the bust area, I guess this is a nice modification to make the back a little bit longer. And the other thing that I did is I used I-cord bind-offs all around at the sleeves, at the bottom edge, and also at the neckline. And I like it like this. I think it turned out really well. Those of you who have been watching before know that I had a little bit of a rough start with the summergarmentKAL, because originally I started with a project out of recycled yarn that I made for the Great Unravel KAL that has now ended. And this yarn was just really horrible to work with, and at some point I got frustrated and put it down. and started this top instead, and I have to say I couldn't be happier that I went with that decision. Sometimes it's really good to just stop working on what you are working and do something else if it is not making you happy. That's it for finished projects, and now let's jump into what is on my needles and knitting in progress. The first project I have on my needles is my Jakovana, and this is a shawl. It's a design by Isolde Teague, which is called Jovana, and I am calling it Jakovana because I am knitting it out of yak yarn. So let's talk a little bit about the pattern first. This is a top-down triangular shawl with a wide wingspan, I guess, because there are it's like a wide triangle, not a normal regular 45-degree angle triangle, and there are increases worked at the edges on the front and on the back side. I think I can say that because that is also written on the pattern description page. And in the center we have this wonderful cable with some twisted stitches branching out, fanning out from the center. And at the end there will be a lace border, not an applied border, it's a regularly knit lace border, and I am very looking forward to doing that. It's a straightforward pattern, even though it is only charted and there are no written instructions for the main part of the pattern. But I was fine with that, even though I usually don't knit so much from charted patterns. So it is quite a big chart, but it's perfectly fine, I think, even for those of us who are not super experienced with charts. Now let's talk about the yarn that I am using. This is the ball that I have left of the first ball, and it is Bijou Span Himalayan Trail, which is a 75% yak yarn and 25% superfine merino. One ball has 2 ounces, which is only 56 grams and 200 yards. So it's a fingering weight yarn, but it looks a little bit thicker when you are knitting with it. And this is a hand-dyed colorway, which is called Deep Teal. I think it's just a really lovely color. And this yarn is from the Bijou Basin range, which is a range in Colorado who is specialized on high quality yak fibers. They are raising yaks on their property and they are spinning the fibers into yarns. I think they also offer the spinning fibers of yaks. They mix them with other high quality fibers, and they offer a range of different exotic fiber blend yarns. And I am really a fan of this yarn because it has this rustic look to it and is still like really soft. And I'm knitting this shawl because it has different kinds of sections so that you can see how the yarn will look like in the stockinette, in a textured and cabled part, and in the end also in the lace. So now I did also some modifications to this pattern. Of course, it wouldn't be me knitting something if there would not be any modifications. And what I did was, at the cast on, the pattern asks you to do like a 2D magic cast on that you would use for the toes of toe-up socks. And then it was telling you to work these edge stitches here in ribbing. And I didn't really like that. I worked a couple of rows like that and it didn't look nice. Because you know, when you turn your row and the last stitch is a knit stitch, and then on the wrong side row you purl the first stitch, and it always, like, you know, the first and last stitch is always knit on the right side row and purled on the wrong side row. This just doesn't make a good edge stitch. It is okay for if you pick up that line afterwards, but as a finished edge, I am not a fan of that. I don't think that it looks good. So what I am doing instead, you will think I'm doing an I-cord, but I am not. It is a kind of a fake I-cord. So I'm just knitting the edge stitches here in stockinette. And the cast on, I did like a Many of you will know the garter tab cast on, but instead I did a stockinette tab cast on, where I just knit the tab in stockinette stitch. And yeah, what else? Oh yeah, right, the increases. In the pattern, there are make one increases at the edges. And the make one increases if you do them on both sides, on the front and on the back side. Of course, you have to do make one right, make one left, and also make one right purlwise, make one left purlwise. So there are 4 different increases that you have to put at the right places. And these make an edge stiffer because they are, yeah, you always pick up the yarn from in between the stitches, so you're actually creating a tighter tension there. And I want the edge to be nice and stretchy, especially because this is yak yarn and this is going to block really nicely. Yak stretches out a lot when you make it wet, and I want to take advantage of that to make that shawl larger just by the blocking. And so I don't want to have that really rigid edge that is not able to block properly. And what I did instead, I also knitted for a couple of rows with the original increases and it was too stiff for me. So what I did instead was working the increases at the edges with yarn overs. And I guess you can almost not see that when you pull it out, they disappear. Only if you go and look here, you can see that there are some yarn overs. Sorry, that was my needle going against my cup. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it's turning out, and I think it's going to be a very pretty shawl and super warm because yak yarn has the advantage of being extremely warm because it has a lot of air in it. So actually, if you think this was a 50-gram ball in the beginning and there is still so much left, and I went already that far with my shawl, so you see it is super light and super fluffy, and the fibers are very short and keep a lot of air inside them, and it makes the warmest garments and shawls and accessories. So if you have never knit with yak yarn but you would like to try it, I warmly recommend you to go and check out the Bijou Basin range, especially if you're in the US or if you're even in Colorado, then it's even like local yarn for you, because I think the quality of that yak is really nice. And I have seen a couple of other yak yarns before, but this one is really, really special. My next work in progress in my little handmade project bag, you will guess already, in this bag is always the same kind of project, is a pair of socks. This is the first sock that I have started to knit, and this is how far I am with it. This is a absolutely crazy, crazy colorway. This is my chameleon yarn, which I have dyed. I will insert a picture of the chameleon here. I think I have talked about it a couple of episodes before. I have seen this chameleon in the zoo, and then I dyed a skein of yarn to match the chameleon. And now I have decided to start a pair of socks with it, and this is how it is knitting up. It's just really, really cool and strange also in a way, because it's pulling, but then it's also not really pulling, like it's completely irregular and funny pulling, and that's because I dyed it in a very funny and experimental way. So that's the first sock. I stopped just before the heel, and here's my second sock where I am knitting along the leg. And I have decided this time, I'm always mixing up my sock technique. Mostly I am knitting top down, but I am changing up my sock technique. This time I did a 2x2 rib. The past few socks that you saw me doing were 1x1 rib. And I believe that this one I will have a heel flap, even though I have this pooling going on, and I said before that in the pooling yarn I decided to use a short row heel, but I just feel like doing a heel flap this time, I think. And yeah, also I usually, I knit with a DPNs, but I have decided to use my circulars. These are the Addy Bamboo in 2.5mm or US 1.5 size. And I'm using the magic loop method. Actually I wanted to do them 2 at a time, but the thing is I cast on, usually when I do 2 at a time I just knit the cuffs separately, and then I put the cuffs on the same needle and knit them together. not knit them together, but knit them two at a time. And when I cast on the sock, I was out of the house, and then I was done with the first cuff, and then I wanted to continue. I didn't want to cast on the second cuff and things like this, so I just continued one at a time, but like concurrently, like one knitting on one sock the leg and then on the other sock the leg. So here is this yarn, this chameleon yarn that I talked about. It looks also pretty spectacular in the skein. And maybe you're going to notice something compared to my previous episodes, how my yarn looks like. I have started, after I have met Magdalena from the Wolf und Schafe podcast. Hi Magdalena. So Magdalena has noted that she always takes the yarn from the outside of the balls and not from the center of the cake. And I was like, really? But then your ball will fall around and everything. And she was like, no, look, I just pull it off like this and it comes off. And it's true, it really just comes off. I always thought that it will tumble around and fall on the floor and whatever. But it doesn't. And the cake stays clean and nice, and it does not collapse in the middle and make tangles and wobbles and whatever. And you can always look at it and it looks like a pretty cake. So I like that. Thank you, Magdalena, for suggesting that to me, and I am really happy that I am doing that now. Also, I have dyed a little contrasting color here, which is just a teal that I have dyed up to go together with that chameleon for the contrasting heels, toes and cuff. And as I said before, I want to do a contrasting heel flap, I think, in these socks. That was my pair of socks, and we are ready to move on to my next work in progress, which is just a teeny tiny one that I have started yesterday evening. This pattern is the Aviatrix hat by Justine Turner, and I love this pattern. I have knit such a hat already 4 years ago, and it really took me a little bit longer to do it, but it was actually my very first pattern where I used some short rows 4 years ago. And yesterday I have decided to knit that pattern again because I was asked to make a baby hat, and I was so surprised how fast I was able to work it up compared to 4 years ago. And I even made it a little bit bigger than the first time I made it. And yeah, the yarn is my plant dyed yarn, dyed with onion skins and indigo. And you can see that I am almost done. So on this side I have worked the ear flap already and a little I-cord strap. And on this side the only thing that is left is the other ear flap and the I-cord. So the pattern is cast on in the front, and then you are knitting it in wedges of short rows until you bind it off in the back. So if you are on the lookout for a baby hat that is super fun and easy to knit, then I warmly recommend you this pattern. It is very well written. It comes with instructions for 3 different yarn weights, I think sport, DK and worsted weight yarns, and you have a very quick and beautiful result for a little baby. It comes also in various baby sizes, so I think it's a super versatile pattern. And actually I have a little question to you guys. I have here, as you can see, knit this I-cord, and at the tip I have now the tail of the yarn, and I am not sure how I shall weave this end in. Shall I just do some duplicate stitch over the I-cord and then pull it through in the middle? That's what I would go with now, but maybe there are some really clear and cool suggestions by you guys who are more expertised at this than me. So this here is the yarn, and as I said, it is dyed with onion skins and indigo. And I love this subtle variation of different shades of greens and mints and sage. It's just lovely. Oh yeah, and this pad is actually for a baby whose gender is unknown for the moment until it will be born. And so I chose this color. I think it is perfect for either a girl or a boy. Now I would like to share with you some of my knitting plans that are upcoming. So many of you who have watched the first episode of this podcast will remember this little guy here. This is Unini, the unicorn, and this I knit for a KAL that was hosted last year by Christine of the Yarngasm podcast and Magdalena of the Wolf und Schafe podcast. They did a unicorn knit along, and I was participating in that KAL, and I made up this pattern by myself, and I really like how my baby unicorn has come out. And since then I was asked many times to recreate that unicorn, both by people who would like to have one and by people who would like to knit one. So finally the time has come where I think I should cast on a second unicorn. I do have some very rudimentary notes of how I made it, but I think I should still be able to do it. And this first prototype of my unicorn was made out of all plant dyed yarns. This mane here, this rainbow mane, these are all plant dyed yarns, and also the body, this is an indigo dyed yarn. And so for this I have dyed up some yarn, which is here in this wonderful basket. And this yarn is actually not plant dyed. This is acid dyed, but I tried to mimic the naturally dyed colors. And this is what I've got. I think it really looks a little bit like natural dyes here. It's a bit these juicy bonbon colors. And of course the body I am going to knit in this blue here. I'm going to try to just recreate exactly this guy here. So I think it looks good, and I am going to start with it soon, I hope. Spinning, I think this week there is no spinning for me to show you, unfortunately. Even though it was Tour de Fleece and I was watching all of your super amazing work for the Tour de Fleece and your spinning accomplishments, and it was super inspiring, I just didn't feel like spinning so much. I was more in a knitting mood this couple of weeks, and since it should be fun, I just went with it and kept knitting. So with this, we are going to move on to what is new in my stash. Last week I have received a wonderful package in the mail, and this was from Hanna-Lisa Haferkamp, who is a project bag maker from Berlin in Germany, and she is also the host of the Hannah on the Road podcast. So Hannah has teamed up with Saskia from Ovis etc., which is a yarn brand, and with Verena Kors from the Wool Club. And these three fantastic ladies have come up with a wonderful kit that is going to be released next week. So this kit consists of a project bag, a yarn, and a pattern. The project bag is made by Hanna-Lisa Haferkamp, and this is it. It is just so beautiful and simple. I love simple things so much. It is not girly, it is totally unisex. It would be either for a guy or for a girl. And here is Hannah's tag. Here is a beautiful leather zipper pull. The zipper is this wonderful copper colored zipper here. And the fabrics, I think this is called a twill fabric in English. In German it would be Köper, I guess. I'm not a fabric specialist, but I have read a little bit about it some time ago. So here what you actually have is not just the color difference, you have also two fabrics that have a really interesting texture. I don't know if the camera is picking that up, but you have like in the top one a little bit of a smooth herringbone structure, and the bottom one has a little bit of a halo and is a bit like a felted denim fabric. And on the inside it's also pretty. This is looking a bit like a linen lining, or I don't know if it's linen, but it looks like it. And here is also the tag by Hanna-Lisa Haferkamp, and it is on a little pocket. It's a bit hard for me to show you that, but there is a little pocket here and a wonderful little, this guide that I don't know what it's called in English, where you can put your stitch markers or other useful things to it. And here is the cute thank you card by Hannah-Lisa. So that is the project bag. And the next part of the kit is the yarn. And this is by Ovis etc., which is a Dutch indie dyer brand. The dyer behind it is Saskia, and she dyes her colors mainly on Dutch yarns, or yarns that are sourced from the Netherlands, I believe, or at least from Europe. So this one here is Kempisch Heideschaap sock, which is 85% Kempisch Heideschaap, which is, I guess, a Dutch sheep breed that I have personally never heard of before, and 15% polyamide. And then it comes with 80 grams of the brick red and 20 grams of this coral salmony color. And the kit is also available with the colors the other way around, so with a larger skein of the coral and a smaller skein of the brick red maroon color. So together with the project bag, this makes just an awesome kit. I love this modern and simple design and colors, and it's like, you know, there is not a lot of decoration and stuff. It's really clean and simple and focused on the content. That's how I would describe it, because it's a special fabric, it's a special fiber in very simple and elegant colors, and I think it's a great job to put this together. And also I think the copper zipper fits really well with these colors. It's just nice. I am really looking forward to knitting socks out of this yarn, because it feels totally special. It's soft and sturdy and non-superwash, and just a gorgeous yarn. And the pattern that comes with the kit has just arrived on the weekend, and I was blown away, because these socks that Verena has designed are just amazing. I will insert a picture of them here. So these are the etc. socks that come together with the kit, and I think the design is just so beautiful and fits so perfectly with this yarn. And I so much want to knit these socks, and I think that they are so beautiful that we should do a little KAL. So I have been in touch with Hannah, and we are going to figure out the details, and then you can check the Ravelry thread if you are interested in joining this KAL. And if you're interested in getting this wonderful kit with the pattern, it is going to be released on August the 3rd on Etsy in the shops of Hannah-Lisa Haverkamp and Ovis etc. There will be links to both of these shops in the show notes, and I warmly recommend you to get your hands on some of these while there still are some left, because I think they will be pretty popular. So then I have another little stash acquisition, just really quickly, something that I bought together with my friend, who is a fairly new knitter. He started about a year ago, and I taught him how to knit, and he wants to knit colorwork. And so he started with the idea to knit the bubble hat. And since he ordered yarn for it, I decided to order yarn for it as well, because I haven't made a bubble hat yet, and it is just so beautiful. So for those of you who don't know, the bubble hat is a very popular pattern by Donna Smith, which was designed for Shetland Wool Week in, I believe, 2015 or 14, maybe even already, I don't know. So this here is the yarn that I got for the bubble hat, and this is Jamieson's Shetland Heather, and I chose from the black one is the Shetland Black, the blue one is the Highland Mist, the green one is the Wood Nymph, and the white one is Ivory. So these are the colors that I chose for the bubble hat, and I am going to cast it on soon together with my friend to help him with the cast on, because I think he has never really knit with DPNs in the round. He has only knit socks on Magic Loop, so that will be new for him, and of course the color work. And yeah, I think it's gonna be fun, because I really like how this yarn feels like. And now let's move on to the special segment of this week, which is how I knit. I have been asked by a podcast viewer, Beth, who is Lucy Jane Sews on Ravelry, if I could show how I knit and purl, because I was talking about before that I'm a continental knitter, and she is also a continental knitter, and I think a fairly new knitter as well, so she was interested in seeing how that looks like. And I think that's quite a good idea, because isn't it interesting to know how all those different knitters out there are knitting? There are so many different styles of knitting, apart from continental and English style, which is the difference between continental and English is mainly the hand with which the yarn is held. So continental knitters will hold the yarn with the left hand, while English knitters hold the yarn with the right hand. And so that of course is a different tensioning issue, and some stitches are a bit easier in one way or in the other way to work them. And the English knitting is of course coming from the British Isles, I think from the British Isles, and they have expanded on the US and also I think on parts of South America. I have seen English knitters in South America as well. And the continental knitting is coming from Europe, from the continent. That's I think where the name comes from. And apart from these two major big knitting styles, there are many other little special styles like Portuguese knitting and Eastern European knitting, Norwegian knitting or Scandinavian styles of knitting. I'm sure there are many different kinds also in the Middle East and all around the world. I would actually like to know how the Chinese knit also. This might be quite interesting. I have not seen that so far. So yeah, if you would like to share how you guys knit, I would really like that. If you would make a little video in your podcasts or on Instagram to show us how it looks like when you knit. So I have recorded a little video of how I knit, and I'm gonna insert that here. I am working on my Dovana shawl here out of Bijou Spun Himalayan trail yarn, which is a 75% yak yarn and 25% merino. And I am using my Adi Click interchangeable needle set. These are bamboo needles, and I'm working in size 3.5 millimeters or US 4. Maybe you know that I really like working with wooden knitting needles as opposed to metal needles, because I feel like I'm too loose of a knitter to work with metal needles, because there the stitches just kind of slide off my needle tips when I work with them, and the wooden needles give me a little bit more grip. But still I like to have a pointy tip, and I feel like with the Adis I get a beautiful pointy tip that I like to work with. The other brand that I really like to work with are the Knit Pro, or in the US they are called Knitter's Pride, and here in Europe they are called Knit Pro Symphony or Naturals. These are the Naturals, they are in brown, and the Symphony are basically the same, but they have these rainbow colors. And also this is now size 4mm, 4.5 millimeter, and these have also really nice tips, and I like working with them. These here are a little more smooth on the surface than the Adis. The Adis have a little more grip. And depending on the project that I'm working on, I am choosing if I would like to have a little more grip or if I would like to have a little more slick surface. So the yak yarn is a very stretchy yarn, and it's good to work it at a tight gauge or to tension the yarn properly, and that's why I'm using the ones with a little more grip, because there I can work tighter. So for the knit stitch, the yarn is in the back, and I am inserting my right needle into the front of the stitch. I am getting the yarn, pulling it through, lifting the other stitch off, and then I'm giving it a little tug. This is to make sure that the stitches in the end all have the same size, or like the tension gets even. And you can see how my hands, I'm doing a little bit of movement like this. So I'm going in, getting the yarn, and then my hand, this hand here comes a little bit over. And this is how it looks a bit more fluent. I am not really able to knit fast here because I am standing next to my tripod, trying not to shake it and trying not to move my hands out of the picture, so I am not in my usual comfortable position. So at some point you'll see the stitches are gathering up here and you have to move them. So now I am on the wrong side in the stockinette section of this shawl, and here I am going to show you how I purl. The tensioning of the yarn is exactly the same, but as you know, for purling the yarn is in the front. And now there are many videos out there on how continental knitters are purling, and I often see that they do some weird movements with this finger here to bring the yarn down. I don't do this, so also when I purl, I don't flick, I pick the yarn. So I insert the needle from the right to the left in the front of the stitch, and then I pick the yarn and pull it through. So now when I do it that slowly, it doesn't work properly. Let me show you that again. I'm inserting it in the front and I'm picking it, and all that my finger here does is it brings it a little bit closer. So basically it's again this movement of my wrist that I also do when I knit, when I do the knit stitch. So it's like there is not much movement involved. You see, I'm just doing it like this. And there is no like crazy wrapping whatever happening here. I cannot even do that. I just do the main work with my right hand needle. And that's also why I think for a right hand knitter this is a nice style of knitting, because you have the whole control over your knitting with your right hand. The only thing that the left hand does is tensioning this yarn and maybe bringing the thread a little bit closer. So there is one more thing that is maybe kind of important when we talk about purling. Many of you will experience that your purl stitches end up looser than the knit stitches, and this is because it is you are purling with the yarn in the front and you're probably leading your yarn in the front, and then this here, you see how loose that gets here. What I usually do is I bring the yarn back to the back and I tighten it, and then I bring it back to the front. This looks like an additional step, but for me it's like built in. You can you see how I do that? I just bring it back and then I bring it back to the front. And the movement of the yarn from back to the front when you're a continental knitter goes really fast, because I do it with this hand again, you see? I just move the yarn from front to back and from back to front. And of course it's better if your stitches are closer to the tip here, then you don't need to drag so much. So try to move your stitches smoothly along the needle so that they are at the tips where you are working with them. And that was it. So that was how I knit, and I hope that was interesting for you. The next segment that I would like to talk about is the shop release of the dunkelgrün yarns that is going to happen this week on the 30th of July, which is a Sunday, and I will do that at 6 p.m. of Central European summertime. So in the US that means it is a little bit earlier in the day of Sunday, and in the East it means either a little bit earlier in the evening, and if you're as far east as New Zealand, unfortunately that means early Monday morning. But I think even if you are a viewer from New Zealand and you would like to get some yarn, then just get up like 15 minutes earlier on the Monday the 31st of July, and before you go to work, and check out the shop. I am sure there will be something left. So what is going to be in this shop release? It's gonna be the naturally dyed yarns, many of these skeins that I have shown you in the past 2 or 3 episodes. And I have just had a lot of fun dyeing them, but I won't be able to knit up all of them, and I don't even have space to store all of these here in my small apartment, and that's why I would like to give them out to other people to enjoy. And I have been asked also many times if I would do that, and now I am happy to announce, yes, I will do that, and there is going to be this little release. So each of these skeins that is going to be in the shop is unique. There are no sweater quantities of one certain color. If you would like to knit a sweater, you have to plan something with stripes or color blocking or something similar, because each of the skeins that is in the shop is unique, and I have photographed each individually, and you're getting exactly the skein that is in each listing. So for those of you who have asked if this is going to be a regular thing now, if I'm going to have regular shop updates, yes and no. I will still keep this dyeing stuff as a hobby, and I will not turn it into a business for the moment, because also I'm going to start a new job in September, and I will just release items if I have more than I can use myself. So this is how it's going to work, and when there are going to be shop updates and how much yarn there is going to be is all sporadically decided. So I hope that you are happy with that, and we will see how it goes. Finally, I have another very happy little announcement to make, and that is a yarn festival that I am going to attend. My friend and I have bought tickets to go to Berlin Knits, and I am super thrilled about that. I am going to attend a sweater design class by Jochi Locatelli, which is super exciting. I can't believe that I have managed to get a ticket for that. And I am also super excited because the festival will be a chance to meet so many of you, especially the German viewers and people that I know from Instagram. So if you're going to Berlin Knits, check out, I have opened a thread in our Ravelry group, and please let me know if you're going, and let's schedule to meet. So this is it for this week. I think I have shown you everything, and I am very happy that we have come through episode 10, and check out the giveaway in the Ravelry thread as soon as we hit 2,000 subscribers. Check out the shop release on Sunday the 30th of July. And if you have any questions about me or about the podcast, please head over to Ravelry. We have a questions thread there, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you for watching, and happy knitting. Have a great summertime. I hope you have a little more sun than we have here at the moment, and see you next time. Bye bye.